Do you ever smile from ear to ear because you know that a classic line is on its way? That's what happened to me when Hastings said, "I'm interested in one thing and one thing only." And then he paused for a split second and we all knew he was about to pull out the bent coppers line. Hi there mate, how's it going? It's Benja here, and this is a breakdown and review of Line of Duty Season 6, Episode 2. As AC-12 begin their official investigation into Operation Lighthouse, a member of the murder investigation team, Farida Jatri, hands in a transfer request to Detective Superintendent Ian Buckles. Buckles is puzzled, so he asks Jo for her opinion, and she says she's noticed some issues with Farida, obviously not disclosing the fact that they were romantically involved. And guess who Farida's replacement is? It's Ryan Pilkington, the kid involved with the organized crime group who we've known since Season 1. I'll be doing a deep dive on Ryan's history in another video, but just know that he was present in the kidnappings of Anthony Gates and then Steve Arnott in Season 1. He even tried to cut Steve's fingers off after Steve headbutted him. Ryan was also present in Season 5 in the John Corbett storyline, and Ryan was the one that killed Corbett. Kate is trying to remember why Ryan looks so familiar, and there's a great moment around the 25-minute mark when we see that Kate has been looking into him. That is Ryan's picture on Kate's computer, so we know that she is looking into his file. That should definitely jog her memory and remind her that she interviewed him back in Season 1, and he admitted that he stole phones for the organized crime group leader Tommy Hunter. That is not something you easily forget, is it? Kate should definitely remember that, and I'll be disappointed if she doesn't. That would be some terrible writing, to say the least. But this right here is why I love this show. They've set up this storyline 8 years ago. There's this kid that falls in with the wrong crowd because of his family life. Then we see him in Season 5 all grown up. He's a proper criminal. And as if that wasn't enough, he becomes yet another organized crime group operative within the Central Police. We'll move on, but I just wanted to mention how Ryan tried to hide from Steve whenever Steve came around in this episode because he could recognize Ryan. Ryan's efforts to hide provided some incredible comic relief. Alright, AC-12 looks into some of Gail Vella's journalistic work, and interestingly enough, the first piece of footage is about Philip Osborne. We learn that he's become the chief constable of the Central Police. He is the top dog now, and we know him from Season 1 because he used to be Steve's commanding officer in a counter-terrorism unit. That unit kicked in the wrong door without shouting armed police, which is essential protocol, and they killed an innocent person. Steve was the only member of that unit who told the truth, and this is how we were introduced to him and to Osborne. I think Osborne could become one of the H suspects, but that is all we hear about him in this episode. Hastings and Steve know that Vella's TV coverage might be controversial, but it isn't enough to warrant a contract killing. So Steve and Chloe visit Vella's editor to see if she was working on something new that could get her into trouble. They find out that Vella was working on a podcast with content that couldn't be broadcast on television, and that she was asking to interview some senior police officers. I think we've got a clear motive now. I believe Vella interviewed a senior police officer that exposed the institutional corruption and cover-up culture of the Central Police. Officers who are working for the organized crime group got a wind of this, and they put out a hit on Vella. This also explains the lack of content on Vella's electronic devices. That is what we're going to talk about next. AC-12 raids Operation Lighthouse and serves Jo with a Reg 15 notice after they learn about the murder of Carl Banks, who was thought to be the real suspect in the murder of Vella. Banks was the person that the informant was talking about at the start of Episode 1. But Banks got away from Beechwood House because Jo asked for the wrong type of surveillance authority, and she then diverted the convoy en route to the apartment. When the police arrived, Banks was gone and they arrested Terry. Even though the murder weapon used to kill Banks had the informant's fingerprints all over it, that is definitely not what happened. The informant did not kill Banks. We know from the autopsy that Banks was restrained and he suffered heavy blunt trauma to the head before getting murdered. The informant wasn't strong enough to restrain Banks and move him before killing him. So AC-12 know that there's something seriously wrong here. Here is what I think actually happened. At the start of episode 1, Jo alerts the organized crime group when she hears about the informant. She then intentionally messes up by asking Buckles to sign off on the wrong type of surveillance authority. She diverts the convoy in the morning, and in the meantime, the organized crime group kidnap and murder Carl Banks because he's a talkative loose end. They clean the apartment at Beechwood House and leave evidence behind to implicate Terry. Last but not least, they kill the informant and make it seem like a suicide, while at the same time framing him for Banks's murder from earlier. Hastings and company can't know for sure that Jo was behind all of this though, and she tells them during her Rec 15 interview that she agrees with their theory about a leak to the organized crime group. But she says she isn't the only one they should be looking into. They should search the houses and cars of everyone that knew about the informant's intel. This is when I realized that Jo was bent. I knew she was going to frame someone because she also lied about the surveillance authority. She said a superior officer messed that up, but she was the one that asked for the wrong type of surveillance. These long-winded AC-12 interviews are my favorite thing about the show. They're always incredibly tense. Hastings is in his element and I love his aggressive demeanor. And I like the fact that these scenes take up so much screen time. This one took up about 15 minutes and it concluded with Davidson getting arrested on suspicion of perverting the course of justice. Funnily enough, that exact behavior is what gets her out of jail. She perverts the course of justice by framing Farida Jatri, and that allows her to escape charges of perverting the course of justice. That's a bit ironic, isn't it? A bunch of burner phones are found in Farida's house, and one of those phones apparently made a call in the early hours of October 27th, the night that the informant talked. Farida is arrested even though she says Jo framed her. Ryan gives Jo a ride after she gets out of jail, but I don't think this means that Jo knows about Ryan's links to organized crime. When Ryan brings up Farida, Jo says, quote, "That's what happens to a rat," end quote. I think her comment here refers to Farida working for the organized crime group and ratting on the police. Jo displays her disgust for a bent copper, Farida, in front of an officer that she doesn't know is also bent, Ryan. Anyways, Jo picks up her own car and we have definitive confirmation that she is bent because she picks up a burner phone at a shady location. She freaks out afterwards in her car, and I think this supports my theory from my episode 1 video. I said that the organized crime group might be threatening Jo by using her mother against her, and that she's bent not because she wants to be, but because she has to be. That brings us to another crucial subject. Kate. Why did she betray Steve's trust after he warned her that they were closing in on Operation Lighthouse? Kate mentioned this to Jo, and Jo went to Deputy Chief Constable Andrea Wise to prevent AC-12 from acquiring their files, at least for a short period of time. Now, why would Kate do that? Well, this is where my theory about her comes into play. I believe that Kate is still undercover, just not for AC-12. She has left them, and that's her cover story. She hasn't assumed another identity. She is done with anti-corruption, and that's her cover. But I believe she's still working for another anti-corruption unit and Andrea knows about it. That's why there was a meeting with Andrea in episode 1 that Hastings wasn't invited to. I think they were discussing Kate's secret mission and they had to keep Hastings out of the loop to make him really believe that Kate was gone, because that supports Kate's cover story. Fast forward to episode 2, and in order to keep her cover intact, Kate tells Jo about AC-12's investigation, and my theory is that Andrea helps Jo withhold her files because Andrea's goal is to get Jo to trust Kate, and that mission is accomplished. Kate has proven to Jo that she's moved on from AC-12. I believe that Kate is playing the long game with her organized crime group investigation, and she is being helped by Andrea Wise and possibly by the police and crime commissioner Rohan Sinwani. In my opinion, Rohan and Andrea are made to look like they are bent, but it will come out that they were playing the long game. I'm expecting that twist. Off the back of this stunt by Kate and Andrea, Kate is likely to get romantically involved with Joe because these two looked close, but I think it was clear that Kate had an ulterior motive, while Joe seems to be developing some genuine feelings for Kate. We also had a weird storyline involving John Corbett's wife, Stephanie. Steve sees her leaving the AC-12 offices with Hastings, which looks strange, so Steve visits Stephanie. Steve notices a new TV, but before he can poke around any further, his back spasms cause him a lot of trouble and he has to take some painkillers. When Stephanie met with Hastings, she said it was about HMRS, so she's having some tax troubles, and that's how the fancy TV comes into play. Additionally, Steve was surprised that Stephanie was able to keep her house because she was worried after Corbett died. But now Stephanie says that Corbett's life insurance helped. I have no idea where they're going with this, but it looks dodgy for Hastings. Is he giving Stephanie money? Where does he find that money? This really doesn't look good. Moving on, Steve gets a preliminary promotion to detective inspector, but he's still weighing up his options as Nicola Rogerson from the Serious and Organized Crime Department sets up a meeting for Steve and her commanding officer. I find Steve's personal storyline intriguing, not only because of the physical problems he's having, but also because of the fact that he feels like his career has stalled at AC-12. We hear him talk about this later in the episode when Chloe brings up the fourth H. Steve talks about how he has moved on, but Hastings is never gonna give it up. So I think it is clear that Steve is not happy with his life, his job, possibly his boss, and that might lead him down a dangerous path, especially the painkiller part. Also, Steve, mate, listen, please keep it in your pants for once and don't get involved with Stephanie, I'm begging you. We have to mention the partial recording found on one of Gail Vella's devices as well, but I don't really have any idea what that's about or whose voice it is we heard. I just think it is too early to speak about that. I honestly don't know anything about it. All in all, this was a vintage episode of Line of Duty with the endless beeping sound at the start of Joe's interview, Hastings pulling out the bent coppers line, bent coppers framing other officers, and Steve and Kate returning to the graffiti tunnel. Lastly, I'm happy with the progress in this episode. I was a little bit worried that things would slow down this season because there will be 7 episodes instead of the usual 5 or 6. Episode 1 was a bit slow in terms of pace. It was alright, but episode 2 was a lot better. That's all the time I've got for today, but I'll be publishing a video about Ryan Pilkington later this week, probably on Friday. In the meantime, let me know your thoughts and theories about episode 2. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe for more movie reviews and TV show breakdowns. That's it for now, take care and see you in the next video.